Well, following security consultations and encouragement from Washington, Israel has decided to send a team of negotiators to Qatar amid reports of progress at mediated efforts to extend the Gaza ceasefire and release more hostages. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Washington believes that a deal to bring home more hostages could be near. Israel agreed to send a team led by Shin Bet official Mem as efforts continue to extend the ceasefire agreement and secure the release of additional hostages. Hamas announced that there were positive signs that discussions could begin on the second stage of the ceasefire hostage deal. They called for more aid to Gaza and the lifting of the Israeli-imposed blockade, but did not demand an end to the war. Israeli officials say they're not aware of any progress. According to the Saudi media, the ceasefire would continue until the end of Ramadan at the end of the month. According to reports, Hamas has now agreed to release some live Israeli hostages in exchange for the ceasefire extension. Israel has sought to extend the first phase to enable further hostage release without committing to an end to the war. Meanwhile, President Trump defended his decision to order direct U.S.-Hamas talks. The president said his effort was aimed at releasing Israeli hostages.
We are having discussions with Hamas. We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. And we're not doing anything in terms of Hamas. We're not giving cash. We're not giving $6 billion like you hear other administrations give. In fact, I got 59 hostages out, and we gave nothing.
The president's comments came after Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer voiced Israel's objection to direct talks. Dermer held what was described as a tense conversation with U.S. Hostage Affairs envoy Adam Buehler. Buehler is leading the direct, secret talks between Hamas and the White House over the hostage for ceasefire deal. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff tried to allay Israel's concerns.
We feel that Hamas has not been forthright with us, and it's time for them to be forthright with us. And Eden Alexander would be a very important show. And so we'll see how they're going to react. The president has issued a statement about what's acceptable to him and what's not. And hopefully we'll see some good conduct next week, and I'll be able to go in there and have discussions.
Witkoff indicated that the time is now right for him to head to Doha and pursue an agreement to bring all the hostages home.
President Trump has been busy pursuing nuclear talks with the Islamic regime in Iran in order to prevent the rogue regime from obtaining nuclear weapons. Let's take a look. On Thursday, President Trump stated he's actively pursuing nuclear negotiations with the Islamic regime in Iran in an attempt to avoid war, and sent a letter to the regime urging them to come to the table for talks, as it would be better for Iran. Only a day later, President Trump ominously stated that something will happen with Iran very soon.
We're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
Since President Trump took office, the regime has been hit with new sanctions under Trump's Maximum Pressure 2.0 campaign, despite Trump's willingness to negotiate. In response, the regime has rejected any talks with the United States. The regime did not acknowledge receiving the letter, which was reportedly addressed to Ayatollah Khamenei himself, but Khamenei did take to X to publish a series of statements rejecting negotiations with the United States. Khamenei specifically took aim at demands to cap Iran's production of weapons and missiles range and called Trump's strategy bullying. Many Iran experts have cautioned that Tehran has a pattern of luring the West into endless negotiations in order to buy more time. But until now, Trump has remained firm in his preference for making a deal over a military option, despite the fact the same regime attempted to assassinate President Trump during the election season. With the regime rejecting every possibility of negotiations and rapidly advancing its nuclear program, the chances of a deal being made are not looking optimistic. And now here to speak with us about the options on the table for the Islamic Republic is Tamar Gindin of the Esri Center at Haifa University. Tamar, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start by asking you, what do you make of Trump's not-so-subtle threats to the Islamic Republic?
I think that's what Trump does. This is how he does diplomacy lately. He just threatens everyone, and he doesn't take into consideration the psychology of the other side. And I think both with Hamas and with the Islamic Republic, threats can only make them, be more adamant in their opposition to peace talks or to nuclear talks or to agreements. what he needs is to provide them some ladder to get off the high tree that they just climbed. They need a solution of honor, a way out of their of the corner they just got into.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw that also with Khamenei's response. Given that response we've seen so far, the total rejection of any talks, do you expect to see the regime cave and engage in negotiations, or only if you're able to see something from the Trump administration that gives them that off route?
I think that if the Trump administration, instead of threatening, comes with a peace offer, they might negotiate. The problem with the previous nuclear talks was that Obama reached a nuclear agreement. The Islamic regime had to sell it to their people as heroic flexibility, because they were under pressure not only from the people who wanted a better economy and better living, but also from the right wing. They were pressured by people who said, what about Iran's deterrence? What about our honor? You're selling the country, you're bending in front of the West. And they had to sell it as heroic flexibility to save the country. And then comes Trump 3 years later and steps out of the JCPOA, which of course made the economic situation much worse. So he's to blame. And some say that the reason that the regime allowed Pezeshkian to be elected, that a president, unlike the US and other countries where the president is really the head of state, in the Islamic Republic, the president is the head of the executive branch. He executes order that he's given. But he's also the person to blame if something goes wrong. And many people said that they allowed him to get elected so they have someone to blame when things go wrong if Trump is elected, which is exactly what's happening now.
Well, if there are negotiations, if they're able to get something going, some have speculated that it will merely be a tactic for the regime to sort of buy time. What is your response to this allegation? Would negotiations be something like that, or is there an actual fruitful result that we could look towards?
On one hand, negotiations is always, a means to buy time on both sides. Another problem is that Islam allows the regime to lie if they feel it's they're in life danger, and they do feel that they're threatened. So that's one problem. But the economic situation and infrastructure situation inside Iran is the worst it's been in years and decades. The blackouts, brownouts that were sometimes brownouts that in advance, and then people get calls, don't come to work today because there's no electricity, or there's no school today because there's no electricity. Universities switch to Zoom because there's no heating, but then they cancel the Zoom classes because there's no electricity. And this week, the water pressure was so low that there were buildings in Tehran that only the ground floor had running water. And they recommending buying water pumps for the upper floors. So we're talking really, everything is collapsing. It really looks like everything is falling apart. They need this agreement if they want to stay in power. They need to give the people something.
All right. Well, we will certainly be following this closely. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But of course, thank you for joining us on the broadcast today, Tamar Gindin.
Thank you.
Many dream of building a home in Israel, a place filled with meaning, connection, and heritage. Now that dream is a reality with Sparta Real Estate. Jewish families around the world now get to find their home in Israel, whether in the vibrant streets of Tel Aviv, the rich history of Jerusalem, or an escape on a coastal getaway. With Israeli real estate expert Eliyahu Kleinman, every bureaucratic step is taken care of for you. It's that easy. Scan the QR code now to begin your dream, and Eliyahu will contact you directly.
With 59 hostages still held in Gaza, efforts to secure the release of all the remaining captives are ongoing, with U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff set to attend Doha hostage talks later this week. ILTV's Ariel Lalachiani has more.
The future of Israel's hostages remains uncertain as the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire concluded with 59 hostages still in captivity, 24 of whom are believed to be alive. As negotiations stall, families of the hostages continue their relentless fight for their release. Among those still held is 21-year-old Ron Breslavsky, a security guard who helped others escape the Nova Party massacre before being taken captive by Hamas on October 7th. A recently freed hostage provided the first public sign of life from Breslavsky in a video posted Thursday, offering a rare glimpse of hope. Meanwhile, Hamas has released a disturbing video of Matan Angrest showing him pleading for his release. His family, shaken by his frail appearance, says the footage is proof of his mistreatment in captivity, calling his condition evidence of torture. Angrist, who was taken from Nahal Oz, urged Israelis to protest for the release of the remaining hostages, warning that they are losing hope. The Israeli government has sought to extend the ceasefire deal until April 19th, a move aimed at securing the hostages' release without a full withdrawal from Gaza. Hamas has rejected this proposal, insisting that only a complete cessation of the war will lead to further releases. With talks at a deadlock, the hostages' fate hangs in the balance. Meanwhile, international pressure is mounting. Former hostage Ali Sharabi met with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London, who vowed to intensify efforts to secure the captives' release. At the same time, 50 former hostages have sent a powerful letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu, urging him to prioritise a deal over military action, warning that captivity is hell on earth. As Israel and the world wrestle with the next steps, the families of those still held remain steadfast in their message. Every moment counts, and time is running out to bring them home.
The ceasefire in Gaza has expired, and mediators are working to extend the agreement, and talks are due to renew in Doha. At the same time, Israel is continuing with plans to increase the military and economic pressure on Hamas. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The IDF has not returned to war in Gaza, but there has been a spike in security incidents. The army said it hit Hamas sites in northern Gaza after identifying suspects planting bombs and engaging in other hostile activities. Israel has also prepared what it called a maximum pressure plan to force Hamas to release more hostages and prevent its ability to reorganize effectively. Israel is using economic and infrastructure pressures in Gaza to force Hamas to make concessions. The step-by-step plan includes cutting off essential supplies, forcing Gazans who return to the north to evacuate again. Israel has already begun implementation of its first measure, the blocking of entry of goods and supplies into Gaza. According to Finance Minister Smotrich, the next phase would involve shutting off electricity and water. Hamas has reportedly ordered its gunmen into hiding in preparation for the return to war. A Hamas spokesman warned that an escalation can lead to the deaths of Israeli hostages.
وإننا نحذر عائلات أسرى الاحتلال وكل من يعنيه الأمر بأن لدينا إثبات حياة حتى اليوم لمن تبقى من أسرى العدو الأحياء، وإن أي تصعيد للعدوان على أهلنا سيؤدي غالبا إلى مقتل بعض أسرى العدو كما حدث من قبل في الكثير من الحالات.
There are escalating military components of the plan, reportedly including targeted airstrikes and special forces raids against Hamas leadership. The plan includes the return of ground forces to Gaza and ultimately could include a full-scale military operation to bring maximum pressure on Hamas.
And turning to the north, where the IDF struck Hezbollah terror targets that posed a threat to Israel from Lebanon. The IDF targeted a Hezbollah operative and sites used to store weapons and rocket launchers. The army said the strikes were carried out due to the threat posed to Israel. A reported 20 airstrikes were conducted. The terrorist eliminated was involved in what the army called the rehabilitation of terror infrastructure and directing Hezbollah operations in southern Lebanon. The IDF said the weapons constituted a blatant violation of the agreement between Israel and Lebanon. The strikes came after the IDF carried out a drone strike in Tyre last week, killing a Hezbollah commander in the area. Well, the new Syrian government, led by HTS, engaged in a bloody campaign against the Alawite minority, resulting in the barbaric slaughter of hundreds, many of whom are Christians. Over 1,000 Syrians have been killed over the past 48 hours in the coastal region, with at least 745 civilians being slaughtered. Footage from the event shows HTS fighters shooting at residential homes, carrying out mass executions, beating and humiliating Alawites, forcing them to bark and crawl like dogs, burning and looting of businesses, and other horrific acts of violence. Interim President Ahmed al-Sharaa, who until recently was a most wanted terrorist himself, stated that Syria is pursuing the remnants of the Assad regime, but did not address the barbaric slaughter of civilians. Several dozen security forces with HTS were also killed in the clashes, and Syria's defense ministry said they were attempting to restore calm. Israeli officials have condemned the violence and added that the horrific scenes underscore Israel's need to secure itself from any and all threats in Syria. Well, Jerusalem remained peaceful this weekend. Amid alerts and heavy security deployment, some 90,000 Muslim worshippers prayed peacefully at Al-Aqsa Mosque on the first Friday of Ramadan. More from ILTV's Devil Klein.
More than 3,000 police and border guards deployed in what turned out to be an overwhelmingly successful operation to maintain order and allow Muslim prayer on the first Friday of Ramadan. An estimated 90,000 Muslim worshippers attended prayers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount in the Old City of Jerusalem. This despite fears of unrest due to Hamas-inspired tensions over Gaza. The Old City was under heavy police presence as worshippers made their way through its narrow alleyways and all the stores selling holiday foods. Al-Aqsa has been a flashpoint for violence, particularly with large crowds gathering on Fridays during Ramadan. An estimated 10,000 worshippers from Judea and Samaria were also allowed to attend, but were restricted to worshippers over 50. The first Friday of Ramadan passed quietly. The alert will be back in place ahead of next Friday's prayers, with Ramadan being a month-long holiday.
Well, Columbia University is once again in the headlines for their anti-Israel protests, but this time something is finally being done. Since October 7th, dozens of American campuses have been overrun by Hamas-supporting mobs who have harassed and even physically assaulted Jewish students. According to U.S. intelligence, many of the campus protests had foreign funding from regimes such as Iran, and Hamas itself has praised the students who have engaged in forms of domestic terrorism and displays of anti-American hate, such as burning the American flag. This week, students at Columbia not only protested against Israel, but also hung flyers stating "Death to America," along with photos of Yahya Sinwar. They blocked entrances to campus, prevented students and faculty from attending classes, and barricaded themselves inside a building at Barnard College, injuring one staff member. Instead of allowing the NYPD in immediately to arrest the protesters, the university held off to negotiate, a tactic the school has used repeatedly in such situations, even whilst the mobs have continued to harass Jewish students and make campuses unsafe. Now, the Trump administration is finally stepping up to hold these universities accountable. Not only did the U.S. Department of Justice launch investigations into 10 universities, including Columbia, over their refusal to protect the rights of Jewish students, but the administration also announced a cut of $400 million in contracts and grants to Columbia over their anti-Semitism issue. This announcement came just days after the U.S. State Department announced that the first student visa had been revoked of a foreign pro-Hamas student protester. Jews face persecution and anti-Semitism daily, but the World Jewish Congress is working tirelessly to combat this. Since its establishment in 1936, its goal has been clear: to connect and protect Jewish communities around the globe. Born in Brazil and raised in Israel, Hadassah Getstein is the first woman to chair the Israeli branch of the World Jewish Congress. A veteran board member and World Jewish Congress executive, she's dedicated to strengthening the ties between Jews in Israel and the diaspora, and is deeply committed, of course, to fostering that connection. In her day job, Hadassah works for the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, promoting tech policy for the State of Israel. Today, Hadassah joins us to discuss her leadership at the forefront of global Jewish advocacy and her role in shaping a more inclusive future through the World Jewish Congress. Hadassah, thank you for being with us here today in studio. Pleasure to have you on. Now, you have a very diverse background yourself. I mean, you were in the Israeli Navy, you studied diplomacy and law, and now with the World Jewish Congress. What led you to the point you're at today?
So first of all, thank you for having me at this International Women's Day. And I think it's very important for women to be involved in public service, especially in these days. So yes, my journey, I think, started when as you said, I grew up in a small community of Curitiba in Brazil. And I'm with a family, a Zionist family that loved Israel, and grandparents, they're Holocaust survivors. And even when we made Aliyah, my siblings and I were thrilled to come to Israel, even when I was 10 years old. And I grew up in Ra'anana, in a community of immigrants, of even my friends, my best friends until today. They were all from Jewish communities around the world, from Belgium, from South Africa, from the United States. And from my young age, I think I wanted to do good for Israel and the Jewish people.
Now, how is it to be working with such a renowned Jewish organization like World Jewish Congress? I mean, have you faced any challenges getting to the position that you're at now?
So first of all, I volunteer at the World Jewish Congress. I deeply believe in the importance of the organization, that we represent more than 100 Jewish communities around the world. And not only combating anti-Semitism, but advocacy and the memory of the Holocaust. And here in Israel, we try to strengthen the bond between the Jewish communities and Israel. And especially in these times, especially after October 7, we had anti-Semitism, of course, before, but Israelis didn't fully understand it, and now they're living it. And the Jewish communities have been a third circle of warriors for Israel. Now, here we have, the war ongoing, we have, the soldiers, and we have the home front, but the Jewish communities are facing different challenges, and they are warriors for Israel. And not only their support for Israel, but, facing a lot of now anti-Semitism and identity. They struggle for identity, and here we have to appreciate them. There are amazing programs for young leadership, and thanks for President Lauder, Ron Lauder, President of the World Jewish Congress. There program for young Jewish diplomatic corps. They're fantastic.
I wanted to ask you more about that, actually. Yeah. When it comes to World Jewish Congress, I know they have a lot of leadership programs for Jewish communities around the world. Specifically for women, how is that agenda of advancing global Jewish leadership also advancing women's leadership in some of these places?
Yes, well, I think the World Jewish Congress is a special place. We have many women leaders. They're head of communities, they're diplomatic women, and we launched now a special a commissioner for gender equality, Marie Zan from England. And we have launched a special initiative designed to foster stronger sense of connection and empowerment among a woman. And it's born out of, we recognize the importance to creating a platform for issues like gender and leadership, and giving women the tools to be leaders.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but yes. I want to thank you for all you're doing and for being a role model for so many young Jewish women as well, and to the World Jewish Congress for their efforts on this front as well. Thank you for joining us, Hadassah.
Thank you so much.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of around 11 degrees Celsius or 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 19 degrees Celsius or 67 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.